History, as it's often told, centers on kings and conquerors, yet the ancient world pulsed with the intellect and ingenuity of women whose accomplishments have often been overshadowed. This video brings to light several such women whose work shaped fields from mathematics and medicine to politics and poetry. Recovering their stories is a delicate process. Documents are scarce, and historical biases have blurred the picture. But by carefully analyzing the surviving evidence, we begin to grasp their considerable impact. We'll examine examples across Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and China, revealing the breadth of women's roles and the worth of their skills. Our story begins in Mesopotamia, around 2300 BCE, with Enheduanna. She was the high priestess of the goddess Inanna in the city of Ur, and more remarkably, the first author in recorded history whose name we know. Appointed by her father, King Sargon of Akkad, Enheduanna's position wasn't solely religious. She was a vital political figure, consolidating Akkad's control over Sumer. But it's her writings that secure her place in history. We have surviving hymns and poems attributed to her, primarily dedicated to Inanna. These aren't simple religious verses. They are powerful expressions of devotion, fear, and political insight. These texts were revolutionary. The use of the first-person voice expressing individual emotions was unprecedented. The hymns also served to syncretize Akkad's and Sumer's deities, solidifying her father's power. Even though documentation is scarce, the very existence and survival of her written works shows her influence. Fragments of her work survived, copied and recopied for centuries, a testament to the high regard with which she was held. While certainty is difficult, historians believe that Enheduanna's work set a precedent for literary expression and religious practice in Mesopotamia for generations. Her writings influenced later hymns, and her role as priestess poet established a template for future religious and political leaders. Her role as a woman in this period is especially unique. Centuries later in Egypt, around 1500 BCE, Hatshepsut defied convention by becoming pharaoh. A woman ruling Egypt was not unheard of, but usually as a regent, not in their own right. Hatshepsut, however, asserted her right to the throne. She skillfully used propaganda, portraying herself as divinely appointed and emphasizing her royal lineage. She even adopted the traditional attire of a male pharaoh, including a false beard, to reinforce her authority. Hatshepsut's reign was largely peaceful and prosperous. She focused on building projects, most notably her stunning mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri, a testament to her power and vision. She also organized a famous trade expedition to the land of Punt, bringing back valuable resources and solidifying Egypt's economic power. After her death, her successor, Thutmose III, attempted to erase her from history, defacing her statues and removing her name from monuments. Some scholars believe this was an act of revenge, others a political move to secure his own legitimacy by preventing future female claims to the throne. Despite these attempts, Hatshepsut's legacy endures, evidenced by the magnificent temple she built. Though damaged, it still tells a compelling story of a woman who ruled one of the world's most powerful empires. The level of skill for her rise to power is incredible, considering the social situation of the time. While certainty is difficult, historians believe that Hatshepsut's reign demonstrated that a woman could successfully rule Egypt, although her example was not widely followed. In 5th century BCE Athens, a woman named Aspasia of Miletus carved out a unique space for herself. A foreigner in Athens, she became known for her intelligence, wit, and captivating conversation. Aspasia ran a salon, attracting leading intellectuals like Socrates and the playwright Euripides. She was also the partner of Pericles, one of Athens' most influential statesmen. While the exact nature of theirs is shrouded in mystery, it's clear that Aspasia exerted considerable influence over him. Some ancient sources even suggested that she wrote his speeches, a claim that remains debated. However, Aspasia's influence drew criticism. She was accused of corrupting Athenian youth and impiety. Although documentation is scarce, it reveals the prejudice she faced as a woman who dared to engage in intellectual pursuits. Her influence came under fire, and she was scrutinized for her actions. Despite the challenges, Aspasia's legacy endures. Her salon fostered intellectual exchange and contributed to the vibrant cultural life of Athens. While certainty is difficult, historians believe that she served as an example of a woman who could participate in intellectual and political life, even within the constraints of Athenian society. As a woman in the period, to gain influence in a place where they had almost none shows an ability to overcome barriers. While some have cast doubts about her involvement, her legacy as an influential and intelligent woman is secure. Centuries later, in Alexandria, Roman Egypt, around 400 CE, Hypatia stands as a beacon of intellectual inquiry. She was a renowned philosopher, mathematician, and astronomer, and she headed a Neoplatonic school in Alexandria. Known for her sharp mind and her dedication to knowledge, Hypatia attracted students from all over the Roman world. Hypatia made significant contributions to mathematics and astronomy. She wrote commentaries on mathematical works and improved astronomical instruments, though sadly, none of her original writings survive. Most of what we know comes from secondary sources and letters from her students. Hypatia's life tragically ended in 415 CE. She was brutally murdered by a mob of Christian zealots who saw her as a symbol of paganism and a threat to their religious authority. Her death marked a turning point in the history of Alexandria, signaling the decline of intellectual life in the city. Despite the tragic circumstances of her death, Hypatia's legacy endures. She became a symbol of reason, learning, and intellectual freedom. Her example inspired later generations of scholars and thinkers. Even though documentation is scarce, it serves as a symbol of what knowledge brings in society. Though some might argue that Hypatia's work didn't significantly change any field of study, it changed what people thought of women. While certainty is difficult, historians believe that Hypatia stood as an example, a woman whose skills took her beyond what was thought possible. Our final example takes us to China, in the 7th century CE, where Wu Zetian rose to become the only female emperor in Chinese history. Initially a concubine of Emperor Taizong, she shrewdly navigated the complex politics of the imperial court. After the emperor's death, she married his successor, Emperor Gaozong, and gradually consolidated her power. Following his death, she ruled as regent for her sons before eventually seizing the throne for herself in 690 CE, establishing the Zhou dynasty. Wu Zetian's reign was marked by both achievements and controversy. She expanded the empire, reformed the bureaucracy, and promoted Buddhism. However, she was also ruthless in eliminating her rivals, using secret police and employing harsh methods to maintain control. Her reforms changed the dynamic of Chinese culture during her time. After her death, the Tang dynasty was restored, and Wu Zetian's legacy was heavily criticized by Confucian historians. She was condemned for usurping the throne and for her perceived immorality. Despite this criticism, Wu Zetian's reign was a significant period in Chinese history. Although documentation is scarce, it shows that Wu Zetian showed an unmatched skill in Chinese politics. While certainty is difficult, historians believe that she's proof of the strength of women. Her place in Chinese history shows that a determined person can break down barriers. She showed a skill that was almost never seen. Enheduanna, Hatshepsut, Aspasia, Hypatia, and Wu Zetian, these women stand for a small portion of the talented women who lived in ancient times. Understanding their accomplishments challenges historical norms and reveals a more complete past. Much of the information on these women is lost, so future research is needed to understand them better.